Welcome to the Explainer. We're all pretty familiar with the classic Count Dracula, right? The ultimate, terrifying creature of the night. But what happens when you take that ancient, brooding monster and just drop him right into the middle of modern-day social obligations? Well, let's dive into it, because we're about to explore this incredibly brilliant, whimsical reimagining of the legend, one that swaps out pure bloodlust for, honestly, party planning anxiety.
But before we get into the nitty-gritty, I want you to think about this. What truly terrifies the immortal Count Dracula? Is it the classic stuff? Are we talking about a heavy braided necklace of pungent garlic, a sharply whittled wooden stake to the heart, or maybe the searing rays of the morning sun? Well, hold on to those thoughts for a second, because the truth for this modern monster is unexpectedly and hilariously mundane. Think about this evolution of immortality for a second. On one hand, you have Bram Stoker's Victorian-era monster from his original novel. Stoker's creature is fundamentally flat, kind of one-dimensional. He's never really given his own voice, and he's pretty much only ever depicted hunting innocent victims in the night. He's driven purely by this eternal curse, lurking around in terrifying, crumbling ruins. But then we have award-winning poet LindaAnn's take, the bachelor vampire. Instead of hunting, this guy's outsourcing his refreshments to a local blood bank. Instead of an eternal curse, his psychology is driven by total party planning anxiety and this desperate need to outdo last year's event. And his environment? He's highly stressed out by the relentless financial demands of castle real estate upkeep. Relatable, right?
This fantastic reinvention comes to us from Lo Schiavo's acclaimed chapbook, Vampire Verses. She's a native New Yorker, a highly decorated poet, and a member of the British Fantasy Society and the Horror Writers Association. And this specific collection has really resonated. It proudly boasts some pretty serious accolades, actually picking up the Bookish Award and securing the prestigious Excellence in Literature Award. It's one of those rare collections that completely respects traditional folklore, but entirely flips it on its head.
The crucial thing to remember here is that this isn't your standard gloom and doom horror poetry. Just listen to this 5-star Goodreads review from a reader named Crystal J. She specifically praises the collection as a whimsical take on Count Dracula and calls it a delightful read for anyone who loves vampire lore. That word whimsical really hits the nail on the head. It sets the perfect, lighthearted stage for the specific poem we're going to unpack today, where the Prince of Darkness has to put on his hosting hat.
Section 1. The Party Checklist. Mundane horrors of a bachelor vampire.
So, we're diving into Lo Schiavo's 19-line poem, Dracula Plans His Hallowe'en Soiree, and it is all about the absolute logistical nightmare of throwing a party for the undead. In the opening lines, she introduces us to Dracula's literal checklist, and honestly, the pressures are so universally relatable. The poem tells us that near Halloween, a routine tension sets in. He's a bachelor, and he's feeling this intense pressure to outdo last year's event. He's got to manage the entertainment, the catering, the decor. He's even annoyed that some guests attended by mistake last time, and he's really hoping they don't show up again. But he has to do it. Tradition dictates that hospitality is absolutely essential to his kind. He has to preserve his longevity and his reputation, and his entourage deserves to be amused. It's just brilliant. It takes the very human anxiety of entertaining and projects it onto a supernatural lord.
Just imagine a standard, mundane wooden clipboard. And on it, entertainment, catering, and decor, all neatly checked off. There's something deeply, deeply funny about picturing the terrifying Count Dracula sitting at a heavy oak desk, sighing heavily and aggressively checking a box with a red pen just because he finally locked down a DJ for his Halloween party.
Picture this completely modern bachelor vampire. Sure, he's dapper, he's wearing the classic cape, but he's not baring his fangs at some helpless victim. He's standing there in a tailored suit, intently reviewing a scroll-like party checklist covered in little icons of bats, coffins, and wine glasses. It perfectly captures how far we've come from Stoker's terrifying creature lurking in the shadows. He's really just a guy, an immortal one, sure, but a guy trying to make sure his social event goes off without a hitch.
Section 2. Modern Solutions. Catering for the Entourage.
Now, a vampire's guest list obviously presents some highly specific, unconventional challenges. How exactly do you feed an entire entourage of the undead without drawing an angry mob with pitchforks? Well, the poem provides a fantastic, modern solution. Let me read you these clever lines directly from Lo Schiavo's work. His entourage deserves to be amused. Instead of necks turned red as afterbirth, refreshments can be served by a blood bank, thanks to a generous donation made. Do you see what she did there? It's a total subversion of the Victorian monster. No hunting in the night, no terrifying bites. Just a very practical, outsourced delivery from the local blood bank to keep everyone happy. It's efficient, it's modern, and it's hilarious.
And the visual juxtaposition of this concept is just incredible. Julia Masserin did the original illustration for the book, and it's spot on. You imagine this classic, foreboding Gothic architecture, the heavy stone, glaring gargoyles on the roof, the whole dramatic cape aesthetic. But pulling right up to the front door, right next to the cheerful jack-o'-lanterns, is a completely mundane 1930s-style delivery truck. The driver is just casually handing over a crate, simply labeled Blood, directly to Dracula. It perfectly grounds all that mythical fantasy right into the reality of modern convenience.
Section 3. The Unquiet Mind, Real Estate and Instinct.
As fun as all this is, La Schiavo doesn't just leave it at a cheap joke. She actually uses the scenario to dive a little deeper into the vampire's psyche. The crucial point gets revealed in a stanza we can call the restraint. The poem says that his exquisite concentration on all these party details is actually a tourniquet for his unquiet mind. Why? Because his mind is completely obsessed with real estate, castle upkeep, and all the demands imposed by Vampud's life and death. So organizing the party is basically keeping the crushing weight of eternal chores at bay. But then we hit the instinct. Once the party plans are done and the checklist is fully ticked off, the civilized bachelor just sort of fades away. The poem concludes, the Transylvanian lord licked his lips, succumbed to tempting pleasure-crested pricks. Once the mundane work is finally out of the way, the immortal predator allows himself his true instinctual release.
This really delicate balance of the mundane and the macabre is exactly why this collection gets so much praise. Check out what Nora B. Peavy at the Horror Review had to say. She notes how Lo Schiavo follows traditional vampire folklore, but totally reimagines it. She writes, her words are simple, yet elegant, and her sense of humor shines through this collection. Dracula Plans' Hallowe'en Soiree is literally the perfect example of that. It takes a voiceless Victorian monster and gives him a highly relatable, stressed-out modern personality, all while keeping that elegant, dark undertone intact.
Which leaves us with one final provocative thought to ponder today. When we strip away all the myth and the magic, is the true curse of immortality really the sunlight or the wooden stakes or the eternal thirst, or is it actually just an endless eternal list of chores and social obligations? It definitely makes you look at the Prince of Darkness in a whole new, surprisingly sympathetic light. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer of LindaAnn Lo Schiavo's brilliant work. Next time you're stressing out over hosting a party, just remember, even Dracula has to make a checklist.